every time I go to Chick-fil-A, in the back of my head, I don't know if I'm proud to say this or if I should be ashamed. In the back of my head, I go, I'm going to catch one employee that doesn't say my pleasure when I say thank you to them. And I have to honestly admit, in 3 decades of going to Chick-fil-A, never one single time have they even slipped up and said, oops, I meant to say my pleasure. So I want to ask how this started. But then I kind of want to ask just a little deeper, how is this trained and ingrained? And I ask even the youngest people at the windows, I say, how do you learn this? And they just kind of, it's almost like they smile and wink at me. Nobody's ever actually given me an answer. But even the teenagers that are in high school that are just getting started, they just never fumble it. And so how did it come to be? And how did you ingrain this at scale that permeates the organization and might be one of the core tenets that Chick-fil-A will always be known for?
Well, that journey kind of started in the late 90s. We had been spending the first 10 years or so of freestanding restaurants. We'd spent a lot of focus on getting better at operational systems and procedures and customer measurement to raise the bar on operational performance, foods, speed of service, accuracy, cleanliness, etc. But there was an opportunity, okay, if we want to be an out-of-the-box blue ocean brand that doesn't look and smell like other fast foods, we're not there yet. We were the best of a bad lot. And just to be quite frank, Truett, again, was the catalyst. He had spent some time on a trip in a Ritz-Carlton. He had interacted with several people in the hotel he was in, and every time he said thank you, they would look at him and smile and say, my pleasure. So he came back, I'm shortening the story, he came back and told that story in a national Chick-fil-A seminar to all the operators and staff and said, I'd like to ask you, when you go back to your restaurants, teach all your team members, so if somebody says thank you, say my pleasure back. Because you can't say it without eye contact and without smiling, and it changes your body language. And just trust me, do it. Well, it may sound simple, but there was pushback because operators' immediate reaction was, we're dying here just trying to keep up with transactions and get people's orders processed as quick as we can. We don't have time for warm fuzzies. I mean, really, the majority of them felt that way. That was their gut reaction. All right, so I'll jump forward. The next year, he came back to the meeting, he asked for it again. The third year, he came back to the meeting, he asked for it again. And Dan Cathy and myself and a few others decided, you know what? Truett is, he's telling us, here's the next step of the Chick-fil-A brand. The next evolution of the brand. How do you integrate? And we'd already begun studying not only Ritz, but Danny Meyer restaurants. I don't know if you've heard of him out of New York. And we learned an interesting thing from Danny. He drove into us, service is how you deliver the meal. Hospitality is how you add value to the meal. Well, we were pretty good at service, delivering the meal. But we were not doing anything different to distinguish us from everybody else in our space around the experience beyond the meal. So I'll shorten the story. We benchmarked companies that had great reputation in hospitality. I won't name them all. We visited their locations. We spent time with leaders. We spent time talking to customers and focus groups. If you were to experience these kind of behaviors in Chick-fil-A, what would you think? We developed a laundry list of behaviors, my pleasure being one of them, that customers seem to say that would add a lot to my experience. I like that. I would not expect that from fast food restaurant, even Chick-fil-A. And that's where things like flowers on the table, my pleasure, refreshing drinks without being asked, carrying large orders to the table, bagging large orders and carrying it to the cars for people, umbrellas, service when it's raining, eventually person-to-person ordering in the drive-through. It's where all that came from, was through listening to customers. And so now to your question is, how do you integrate that into what was then 50,000 team members and now 170,000? We had to develop training that was just as specific as how you make a Chick-fil-A sandwich with 2 pickles. These are the behaviors that we expect at these points of interaction with customers, at the counter, in the dining room, in the drive-through, as you roam around the dining room, checking people's experience. These are the behaviors that should occur at these places in the interaction. And we develop video modules to show how they, not what they sound like and look like, how to do them gracefully without interfering with people's experience. We then develop customer research, where we would go into restaurants, and they still do, to measure whether those behaviors are being lived out, using mystery shoppers, who are customers who basically document whether that's what happened in their experience in the restaurant. And at the end of the day, it became so ingrained in the culture of with the operators and the training process. This is what we do at Chick-fil-A. This is how we make sandwiches. This is how we make waffle fries. This is how we interact with the customer at the counter. This is how we interact with them in the dining room. This is how we interact with them in the drive-through. It all is part of the built-in processes and measurements that became the norm. And it's no different than anything else, Chris. You do something enough and it becomes a habit. And when you do the right things enough and they become a habit, they become contagious. And all of a sudden you realize you're out of the mainstream if you don't do them. Yeah. And that's been the evolution. But it all started with churches asking people to say "my pleasure." By the way, it took 7 years to develop the process, the systems, the behaviors, the measurement, the training, and rolling it out. They're probably now, and it keeps getting revised. They're probably now in the fourth or fifth version of the hospitality model, but it's a very specific model. As I said, no different than how you make waffle fries the right way. This is the right way to interact with somebody in the drive-through or at the counter, or to refresh their beverage, et cetera, et cetera. It's hard work, by the way. It's harder than making the food.
Oh, I don't doubt it. Yeah, Chick-fil-A is just it's, even the last 2 weeks kind of being entrenched in it, it makes a lot more sense. But it really is a remarkable company. I was going to share with you, I wrote a tweet probably a year ago that got a lot of traction, and it was very simple. It said, I think one of the best things I could do for my kids in high school is have them work at Chick-fil-A. And that was after leaving the drive-through one day, where I was in kind of a pissy mood, and the person at the ended up chatting with the person at the window and just kind of changed my day around. It was a quick way to realize that whatever I was dealing with was probably not as big. So,
well, Truett, part of Truett's role in this was personalizing it. And one of his favorite things he would say to operators and even team members when he went into stores was, do you know who needs encouragement? And, people look at him and he said, well, let me tell you who needs encouragement. If you're breathing, you need encouragement. Look in the mirror, you need encouragement. Now, given our purpose of having a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A, let's see if every time somebody enters a Chick-fil-A or goes through a drive-through or even engages with us at a ball game, they feel encouraged. They feel valued. And I would say it really reflected his incredible, I don't want to blow people away here, but I think his incredible understanding of the biblical principle of grace. He had experienced grace through Christ, and he wanted people to experience grace, not by quoting a Bible verse, but how they were treated. And I really think the hallmark of Chick-fil-A hospitality is graciousness.